In today's and last video, we'll take a look at the remaining and interesting areas of the national parks. We're exploring the Grand Canyon ahead of us. In the next series, we will address a controversial topic, which is the shape of our Earth. The Grand Canyon is a canyon on the Colorado River in northwestern Arizona, United States. The Grand Canyon extends from the Little Colorado River tributary to the Grand Wash Cliffs on the western edge of the Colorado Plateau, near the Nevada border. The Grand Canyon is approximately 280 miles long, 4 to 18 miles wide, and has a maximum depth of 5,000 to 6,000 feet. The edges of the plateau lie at an elevation of 5,000 to 9,000 feet. And it is in this plateau that we will search for very old artifacts. The walls of the Grand Canyon are made up of layers of sandstone and limestone of different colors. According to mainstream science, the canyon was formed about 6 million years ago. I do not want to refute such claims, but we must always keep in mind the strong radioactive impact on the Earth's surface during the global cataclysm, which is the cause of the faster decay of the isotope of elements contained in the rock. Let's see what we find here. They are again water reservoirs, which doesn't surprise me too much. Notice the almost imperceptible lines that converge at this point. These are again traces of the anchoring of the global web. There are more of these tanks here, like here for example. And again, lines converge here from all directions. Let's now look at what lies beneath the surface. Something appears, but we'll move the axis back even further. Do you see them? It's only a narrow strip scanned and the objects appear to be damaged. I'll highlight the image. We have to be patient because the closer we get to the terrain, the more images disappear from the timeline. I don't understand why it's done that way. We are finally in the right place. You can see that the scans were only taken within a narrow time period. These colossal objects were buried under this mass of limestone and sandstone at great depth. We'll look at a few more areas with reservoirs. Some have retained their approximate shape, others are deformed. You probably noticed that the water tank is again placed on a huge column and is part of it. In more detail, traces of anchors are visible. In places where these pools were clogged with mud sediments and limestone, these sediments, after solidifying, were literally pushed above the surface by the enormous pressure of gases, creating bizarre rocks. There appear to be two water reservoirs here. The lower one is more submerged below the surface, but in this image groundwater is rising up. Now we will show how these giant columns were connected to each other through the openings, the water tanks that we see today. I don't think I need to enhance the image. Everything is very clearly visible. The lower columned formation is significantly damaged. The water tank is located directly on it, and the lines that leads from the tank in all directions connect other tanks. And here you see another column that is connected to the previous column. Here is the anchor. Let's look at other areas. As you can see, there are a lot of finds here and we haven't seen everything yet. Do you see them there? Another water tank on the stone column. And another tank. There are a lot of them here. And look at the colored rectangles that are showing through in the image. Red and green. What is that? And here are more colossi. But they seem to be buried much deeper than the Colorado River, as if they were lying below its level. Many of these columns are about a mile in diameter. But that may also be due to their flattening. As we have already said, these columns were hollow and therefore susceptible to damage from such great destruction. Look at this. And the last picture from the Grand Canyon. At first glance, you wouldn't expect anything here. They are just some kind of settlement and there is stone everywhere. But let's look at older pictures. This one looks completely different. We see some kind of building here that stands on strangely geometric paths. Why here? These are very likely preserved impressions of a lattice structure. And here the situation is similar. Although it is not very visible, the geometrically arranged paths between the buildings actually continue into the distant surroundings. And here it's exactly the same case. We look at the traces of the lattice structure on which people build new cities. They simply use these lines for modern roads. It's interesting that vegetation usually doesn't grow on this geometry. At least not where groundwater is missing, or where something prevents it from reaching the surface. All of this is found on columnar formations lying deep below the surface. You can see how dramatic the image is after highlighting. Let's take a look at Glen Canyon. Notice the river that flows through here. It seems that the water has filled in the cracks that were created here before. Water is patient and takes a very long time to carve out a meander. However, watercourses do not have such sharp shapes. The water washes out its bed in graceful rounded shapes. What do you think? Here we are in a different area. We are looking at Las Vegas and several canyons and smaller national parks in the area. Las Vegas is very interesting in itself and sometimes we dedicate a separate video to it. But let's look at a few details. There are treasures hidden under the desert surface here. At first glance, you must be attracted by the geometry of the streets. They are rounded, there are no sharp corners. They literally form some kind of patterns that resemble printed circuits, and their geometry is visible only from a great height. This is a phenomenon of many American cities. I've never liked how densely built single-family homes are in these new towns. People have no privacy here. It's probably because they want to make the most profit from the sale of land. But I'm sure that wasn't the case here. A long time ago. Notice the ends of the streets. They were supposed to be circular squares, but to save space they are now shaped like this. But elsewhere the developers have kept the shape of butterfly antennae. It reminds me more of a slum. And here we can already see how they are mining the surface. Right next to it is already urban development. Here, too, sediments were originally removed. Here again we have the same streets and rounded shapes. What appears to be a park, i.e. a green area, was once a body of water. Wow, I wasn't sure I'd find something like this. See those blocks of stone? For example, if you look at Santa Rosa on Google Earth and move your timeline back, you will see exactly the same situation. The same thing is also found in Upper Egypt. And that's how roads are built. On each limestone or sandstone block, there's a house. That's why they're so tightly packed together. It's not really a plot marking. Here the sediments haven't been removed yet, and you can see the division there, as if the blocks were actually stacked there. It seems there was even a slight hill here. If we carefully remove the sediments from the areas where the green spaces are, we would discover the amazing geometry of Plato's strips of land and strips of water. The area would look like the east coast of Florida, for example. And everywhere we find circular squares, like butterfly antennae. They are absolutely everywhere. Let's look at the nearest surroundings. To the northeast lie vast fields of solar panels that supply electricity to Las Vegas. There is a strange place here with an unfinished road. This road has been in the same condition since 1994 and maybe even earlier. That is more than 30 years. It is clear that this road follows lines that we have already seen in many areas. This road access has been useless here for over 30 years and is still unfinished. We can only assume that it's for the reason we see here. They're uncovering something here. Do you see that regular, bounded shape? The picture is from 1994, when nothing was happening here yet. But the roads and ramps already exist here and are unfinished. Let's try to go back in time. Do you see them? I'll try to highlight the image. And this is located north of Las Vegas. There's also a place in Nevada called Coyote Springs. I've already made a video about that place and someone asked me what I actually saw there. Well, at first glance I see a golf park there. But there's something else that we saw in Las Vegas. As you can see, there is something going on around the golf course. It's like they are clearing away the top layer of sediment and even smaller mounds. In this image, there are very strange bright objects below the surface, and in the upper right corner there appears to be a hidden square-shaped water reservoir. You see the unevenness in the terrain being eliminated and the entire area being cleared of vegetation and sediments. All of this is happening between these probably very old lahar flows. And here is another place where mining is taking place. There is even groundwater appearing here. This area began to be regulated before 2000, and we will look back into the past. We see here the golf clubhouse, the green areas, and also the intervention in the surface. Notice how the vegetation grows in regular rows here. All these green areas, including this one that is drying up, were originally water belts. And look what we see here. It's almost invisible, but there's the geometry of the roads, or streets. If these polluted bodies of water were cleaned up, we would see a beautiful geometry of strips of land and strips of water. Here you can see an effort to restore the road, but the work has not been completed. The area has been in this state since about 2006, almost 20 years. It is possible that they are waiting to see what they discover further north, as we have already seen. It is still disguised as a golf course now. But something does not belong here. Do you see those islands there, like dividing strips with roads on both sides? And here we see the kind of blocks we saw in Las Vegas, where houses were supposed to stand. But why houses in such a remote location? Maybe they haven't found an investor. Maybe there's no interest in this location. Notice again the circular squares, our familiar butterfly antennae. There's quite a lot going on here. I assume they only play golf on the greens, but there's no movement to be seen. Here we see a situation where the surface was just beginning to be sanded. See those rock piles and unevenness? It's all gone. If they didn't have a reason to clear this up, it probably wouldn't have happened. It must be a costly job, but it seems to be paying off for them. What's the point of all this? Are they trying to see if we'll notice? What do you think? Look, here are already appearing blocks and traces of very old paths. Everything was hidden. Here the square tanks are already exposed, and I can't help but feel that this is a well-established anchoring point for the truss structure. Only 2 of the pools are visible here, and we'll see if there's a reason for them to be there. And there is a reason for this, even though the pictures are not very clear. Do you see the columns there? It seems there is another water reservoir. We moved to Joshua Tree National Park. We have a monument there called the Fingers of Hercules. It kind of reminds me of, you know what? Well, let's see if the Pillars of Hercules are also located here. Something has appeared here, but it's not very clear. Let's try to move a little further. This is much better. South of the find there are again traces of a truss structure that is used as a paths. I'll try to highlight the image. Although there are so many similar areas in the Americas that it would take us several more videos, I think it's time to leave the national parks behind. I'll show you one special place and a picture that I consider the best catch in my collection. There is evidence for it. Let's go. New Mexico is known for its strange patterns on the surface. I'm not sure if I can call them petroglyphs. But it's more likely that they are the traces of something that was once there and was swallowed by the rock. One of these often repeated geometric patterns is a circle with a square in the center. This area caught my attention with a huge object that looks like it's been shattered. I think it could be the remains of one of the columns, and I'll explain why. There's something in these remains. The bottom right is probably a farm. But look at what's in the middle. It's a distorted circle with a square in the middle, and it looks like there were 4 other shapes around the square. And it looked like a flower from the coloring. The circle is very distorted and it's possible that it went through a lot of heat. It's sitting on a broken pillar. And the pillar looks like it was crushed and flattened by a huge force. But that's not all. Next to these ruins are the remains of a truss structure anchorage. In this case, everything is covered with sediment and there is no water. Notice the building on the right side of the picture and you will realize how gigantic these artifacts are. The Bible itself says that we are very small in this world. When I look at these pictures, I would say that people are almost microscopic. And I also sometimes wonder if the bad things that happen in our world have any meaning at all. They are completely unnecessary daily struggles and bad human qualities that overshadow something much bigger and deeper. Something we were not supposed to know until. By the way, do you see that there? And now? This is the picture I wanted to show you. But you've probably seen it here in older videos. It's a pillar with a kind of peak and on top of it is a circle with a square in the middle. Both the circle and the pillar are badly damaged and the circle seems to have been subjected to very high temperatures. It seems to have melted and its diameter is probably no longer the same. For proof that we are indeed looking at a huge pillar and a circle with a square in the middle, we need to look at an Indian temple. India, Bhoga Nandishwara Temple. Indian temples, along with those in Egypt, are the most faithful witnesses to the ancient catastrophe and the biblical story. Yes, Egypt was not ruled by dynasties of pharaohs. Egypt is a biblical library, which archaeology interprets in such a way that you have no idea. But this topic does not belong here now. Although it may not seem like it at first glance, Indian temples are full of biblical scenes and artifacts. You'll find many pillars, gods, spirits in the form of animals, or square pools like this one. Doesn't that remind you of something? Much blood has been shed throughout history, whether due to political differences or, more specifically, faith. Millions of people have died in the name of faith. Yet all the religions of the world, and we must also include indigenous stories, tell the same story. The details differ only in the names and the way they are interpreted. This is a pillar with a disc, which closely resembles the pillar on the scan in New Mexico. The Indians call it chakra. In India, the chakra was an ancient symbol of royal and imperial power, representing both kingship and justice. It is particularly used in depictions of the Chakravartis, the supposed holy emperors over the whole earth. Notice the details. The decoration resembles a kind of intricate flower with a hole inside and is mounted on a column. There is a rounded tip at the top. The temple also contains a relatively large number of stone wheels with a square interior and a round hole for attachment to the axle. They have rich flower-shaped decoration. These are all artifacts of the Earth Temple. If you look at the find of a severely deformed stone disc, you see a square center and reddish areas around the center. These could be remnants of a floral decoration. Here, this decoration resembles a kind of four-leaf clover. Under this chakra there is often a god. We can think of one and the same god here, Hercules with the pillar and the discus, because Hercules belonged, according to legend, to the family of gods. So here we have a column with a beautifully preserved top, and also a circle with a square in the middle. It's on a pillar, and that would mean that the pillar is broken. However, the circle is only partially preserved. It is much smaller and deformed. The shape of the peak can be seen very clearly in detail. The outer ring has disappeared. Note the light-colored rock. A huge, hot blast of air literally melted and blew away part of the stone disc. We don't see anything like that in the upper part of the image. So the destruction must have come from this direction. If you look closely, you'll notice that there's a geometrically regular shadow under the column. It could be a slab. And finally, I marked all visible traces of the torn truss structure that was anchored to the columns. This concludes our series dedicated to U.S. national parks, and in the final presentation you can see the most interesting images from New Mexico. Truth is stranger than fiction. That will be the title of the first part of another series dedicated to the search for the true shape of our Earth. Because fiction can often be very strange, the truth can surpass it many times over. Enjoy the last days of summer and we'll see you here again soon.